Welcome to Twilight Terror Stories. Twilight is not just the end of day, it's the beginning of something else. A time when the shadows stretch and fear takes its first breath. You've stepped into that moment now, and the stories are waiting. Let them find you. My home materialized from the digital ether, an apparition on a screen pulsing with illicit code. A mistake, surely. There, swimming in the murky depths I'd plumbed out of professional curiosity, was my little cerulean colonial, its white trim stark against the encroaching night of the web. The rambling roses by the porch rendered in unnerving clarity. And the price listed beneath? My existence. I squeezed my eyes shut, reopened them. The image held fast, defiant, my sanctuary pinned like a butterfly for some grotesque auction. Below the photograph, text scrolled like an autopsy report, chilling the blood in my veins. Occupant, Eliza Vance, 28. Vocation, investigative reporter. Rituals, pavement pounded daily, 0600 hours. Preferred stimulant source, the daily grind, 5th Street Nexus. Optimal ingress point, kitchen casement, compromised latch. My fingers trembled, tracing the lines of text as I scrolled deeper into the violation. Every detail, horrifyingly precise. My rhythms, my vulnerabilities, the constellations of my friendships and family ties mapped out. And now, it seemed, this intimate cartography was being offered to the highest, darkest bidder. The laptop lid snapped shut. A reflexive recoil. Air thickened in my lungs, tasting metallic. A prank? A grotesque fiction spun from paranoia? The cold certainty settling in my marrow argued otherwise. As a chronicler of cyberpathologies, of the dark web's festering secrets, I'd witnessed countless digital horrors, yet none had ever breached my own walls. Until now, literally. Silence descended, thick and suffocating, as my mind struggled to grasp the impossible reality. Then, the dam broke. Panic surged, a frantic tide. Action was imperative. Someone had to know. But who? The constabulary? Would they perceive this as anything more than delusion? With hands that felt disconnected from my will, I coaxed the machine back to life, chasing the ghost side. Vanished. Utterly. As if the pixels themselves had conspired to deny its existence, leaving only the lingering chill of its presence. Had I hallucinated it? No. The cold dread was too real, and its reality meant my peril was absolute. The subsequent hours dissolved into a frenzy. Passwords mutated into complex, desperate strings. Adhesive obscured the unblinking eye of my webcam. The thought of pulverizing my phone flickered, tempting. Yet, a persistent whisper slithered through the panic. Too late. They possessed the blueprint of my life. How long had their invisible gaze tracked me? And more crucially, whose gaze was it? Dawn bled gray across the window pane, illuminating dust motes dancing in the stagnant air. A decision crystallized amidst the fear. Remaining here wasn't living, it was waiting for the hammer to fall. Escape wasn't a choice, it was the only path left. A duffel bag swallowed essentials. ATMs relinquished stacks of anonymous currency. A cryptic message to my editor. Personal leave indefinite. One final aching glance at the house, 5 years of life etched into its walls, and then I stepped out, turning my back on everything. Days bled into a smear of stale motel rooms and the hum of tires on anonymous asphalt. My phone became landfill. A burner unit, untraceable, took its place. Every ingrained habit was consciously fractured. No pre-dawn runs, no comforting ritual at the daily grind. I strove for invisibility, a specter paying in cash, leaving no digital spore. Yet the sensation persisted, prickling at the nape of my neck. I was observed. Each surveillance lens seemed to pivot as I passed. Every unfamiliar face held a potential threat. Paranoia wasn't a companion. It was the very air I breathed, whispering dangers into the silence. Fifth day, Greasy Spoon Sanctuary off a highway bleeding into nowhere. Idly navigating sanitized news on a newly acquired burner laptop, a window bloomed unwanted on the screen. My house again. But the text beneath pulsed with a terrifying immediacy. Asset mobile. Vector, West, Hawaii 16. Bounty active for current coordinates. Ice water sluiced through my veins. They were still tethered to me somehow. Now, my location was a commodity, crowdsourced to the shadows. The laptop slammed shut, drawing incurious stares from worn-out patrons. My thoughts scattered like startled birds. How? The digital breadcrumbs were swept clean. Then, a sliver of ice slid down my spine. Not digital. Physical? A half-remembered article surfaced from the recesses of my reporter's mind. Subcutaneous trackers, fringe tech, dismissed as conspiracy fodder back then. Now, my hands fluttered over my body, a frantic search for the alien bump, the telltale scar beneath the skin. Nothing palpable. But absence wasn't proof. Had it been introduced while I slept? In the water? The food? Stop. The command echoed weakly in the noise of my fear. Think. But rationality felt like a distant shore, receding with every mile marker devoured by Highway 16. Each passing headlight felt like pursuit. Every sideways glance, a judgment rendered. Help. The realization struck with the force of a blow. But whose? Colleagues? Too exposed? Law enforcement? They'd label me delusional. Family? Unthinkable to pull them into this vortex. Then a name surfaced from the depths of memory. Silas. College ghost. Prophet of the surveillance state. Long since vanished off-grid amidst Cassandra cries about data empires and control. We'd called him paranoid. Now his foresight felt chillingly prescient. Finding his rumored sanctuary, a hermit's shack clinging to a mountainside miles from anything resembling civilization, was an act of faith fueled by desperation. It demanded effort, navigating whispers and forgotten trails. The drive itself was a gauntlet of frayed nerves, each curve concealing potential doom. Finally, after hours that stretched thin in a lung-burning hike up a path more suggestion than trail, I saw it. A weathered cabin, hunkered down, almost swallowed by the ancient trees. I approached like a supplicant, heart hammering against my ribs. What if he wasn't here? What if this too was orchestrated? As my knuckles hovered before the rough-hewn door, it creaked open, framing a figure more myth than man, leaner, wilder than memory served, the glint of a shotgun barrel aimed squarely at my heart. "State your business," the voice rasped, unused to discourse. "Silas," I managed, hands lifting slowly, palms out. "It's Eliza Vance, from university. A flicker of recognition crossed the weathered features, swiftly eclipsed by guarded suspicion. Eliza, what brings you to this altitude? How did you even find this place? I need sanctuary. The words tumbled out, raw and urgent. They're hunting me, Silas. They have everything. Sold online. I had nowhere else. No one else. He scrutinized me, a long, unnerving appraisal, the shotgun unwavering. Then, with glacial slowness, the barrel dipped. Inside, he commanded. Sounds like explanations are in order. The hours that followed were a torrent of confession meeting grim understanding. I laid bare the sequence, the listing's discovery, the flight, the relentless pursuit, the non-paranoia. Silas absorbed it all, his face carved granite in the dim cabin light. When silence fell, he let out a breath, slow and heavy. You've kicked the nest, Eliza. Sounds like the Watchers have taken an interest. The Watchers? The name hung heavy, unfamiliar yet resonant with dread. Silas nodded, eyes distant. A clandestine collective, decades operational. They harvest lives, curate data, sell access to the highest bidder, regimes, syndicates, corporations, anyone with the currency. But why target me? My voice was small, lost in the cabin's shadows. I'm insignificant. You investigate, Silas stated flatly. You dig where shadows breed. My guess, you unearthed something they preferred buried. The connection sparked. That deep dive into unregulated data harvesting, dismissed as another tech expose, had I inadvertently illuminated their operations. What recourse do I have? The question felt like admitting defeat. Silas's expression hardened. Recourse? Now? We retaliate. We expose their network, shatter their infrastructure. I stared, caught between primal fear and a burgeoning, dangerous excitement. How? A slow, almost feral smile touched Silas's lips. I have cultivated certain skills, but it demands risk, guarantees non-existent. Are you prepared for that? I thought of the life stolen, the home violated, the constant terror of the hunt. Retreat was impossible. I'm in, I affirmed, the words tasting of resolve. Whatever is required. Silas nodded, a spark igniting in his gaze. Good. Then the work begins. There's a war to wage. Huddled over glowing screens, schematics blooming in the cabin's twilight, terror warred with a fierce, unfamiliar surge of adrenaline. My old life was ash. This new one, a battlefield. The Watchers thought they held the cards, orchestrating my demise from their unseen perch. But the game had just changed. Let them watch. We were coming for them. The hunt had reversed. Spectral encounters were the stuff of campfire tales. Folklore I'd relegated to the dusty attic of imagination, until the night shadow, my steadfast Alsatian, revealed the unsettling truth. Reality harbors fissures, unseen presences lurking just beyond the veil. I etched this account onto the page, a desperate cartography of the inexplicable. Belief is optional. The events, however, remain immutable. December held the city in its frigid grip, a Tuesday night stitched together by the rhythmic sigh and clatter of the building's ancient heating system. I was submerged in the blue glow of some streaming crime drama, shadow a dark, breathing mass at my feet. The digital clock bled 10:47 p.m., a detail seared into memory, marking the countdown to a necessary 6 hours of oblivion before work's early claim. Then, a thread of sound, thin as spider silk, brushed against my hearing. My name, Leo, exhaled directly behind my left shoulder. A violent pivot revealed only the familiar expanse of wall, its tired ecru paint flaking like sunburnt skin. "Just fatigue," I muttered, the assertion flimsy against the sudden tremor in my own voice. Shadow's head lifted sharply, ears swiveling like radar dishes locking onto an unseen target. His powerful frame went rigid, gaze fixed, laser-like, upon the simple wooden dining chair near the kitchenette archway. Empty, always empty. Solitude was my flatmate. "What's got you, boy?" The query hung unanswered as a low rumble began deep in his chest. Not the sharp alert for a delivery person, but a guttural, sustained vibration of unease. The fur along his spine bristled. I fumbled for the remote, silencing the television's artificial drama. Abruptly, the apartment sank into a profound quiet, punctuated only by Shadow's menacing growl and the frantic thumping in my own chest. "It's nothing," I offered, the lie tasting like ash. "Just furniture." But Shadow remained unconvinced, resolutely planting his body between me and the object of his suspicion, a furry bulwark against the unseen. "Leo." Again, the whisper, coalescent now, distinctly emanating from the vicinity of the chair itself. My throat constricted, dessert dry. A clammy dew slicked my forehead despite the room's chill. My fingers, clumsy with adrenaline, scrabbled for the phone. "Who is that?" The words fractured, barely audible. Shadow erupted into sharp, aggressive barks, a sound utterly alien to his gentle nature. I slammed the wall switch, bathing the small living area in stark fluorescent glare. The chair remained, just wood and woven cane, innocuous under the harsh light. Yet my heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the roaring silence in my ears. "Okay, enough," I declared to the empty air, snatching my keys from the scarred coffee table. "Shadow, let's go." But the dog was rooted, a statue of tense muscle pressed against my shins, whining softly, eyes locked on the chair. "Come on, boy, we're leaving." He wouldn't yield. "Leo, stay." The voice solidified further, feminine, hushed, yet fundamentally off, like a melody played on a warped instrument. My trembling thumb stabbed at my brother Sam's contact. Call failed. No service. Impossible. The signal had been robust moments before. Shadow's growl descended into a deeper, more threatening register. My gaze snapped back to the chair. It had shifted. Not dramatically, but undeniably. An inch, perhaps two, pivoting slightly towards us as if an unseen occupant had adjusted their position. "No," I whispered, a denial against the mounting evidence of my senses. "This isn't real." Shadow punctuated my denial with another volley of barks, a raw, primal fury I'd never witnessed. He lunged, jaws snapping at vacant air. Suddenly, the air turned glacial. My own breath plumed visibly, a white ghost in the stark light. The overhead fluorescent tube stuttered, blinked, stuttered again. Out, I choked, shuffling backward towards the sanctuary of the front door, Shadow a trembling shield glued to my side. "Leo, please." The whisper fractured into a sound resembling a sob, thin and reedy. A distinct scrape echoed across the floorboards, the chair legs dragging incrementally, rotating further. My retreat halted abruptly as my back met the unyielding wood of the front door. Locked. The deadbolt thrown earlier, an automatic gesture of urban living. The key trembled violently in my grasp, refusing to align with the lock. Shadow's barks escalated into a frantic crescendo. He surged forward, snapping viciously at the space before the chair. His jaws clamped on nothingness, yet his head wrenched back as if seizing intangible fabric. A shriek tore through the apartment, utterly inhuman, a banshee wail of corrupted radio static and rending steel that vibrated in my teeth. Simultaneously, the fluorescent tube above didn't just flicker, it detonated, showering the room in a rain of fine glass shards and plunging us into near darkness, lit only by the street lights filtering through the window. Metal met metal. The key finally found its purchase. I twisted, wrenching the door inward. "Leo, don't." The voice, intimate now, a chilling exhalation directly beside my ear, accompanied by a phantom touch of icy air on my neck. Primal flight response took over. I bolted. Shadow scrambled alongside, a frantic, furry presence nearly tripping me as we spilled into the relative safety of the dimly lit corridor. The door slammed shut behind us, the sound unnaturally loud. We pounded down the stairwell, bypassing the claustrophobic confines of the elevator, 5 flights descending into the night. From her doorway, old Mrs. Petrova peered out, bewildered. "Leo, is everything all right?" Her voice seemed distant, irrelevant. We didn't stop. We erupted from the lobby into the biting December wind. The cold barely registered against the internal firestorm of adrenaline. Shadow remained plastered to my leg, his body angled backward, a low growl still rumbling as he scanned the building's entrance. My phone screen glowed, signal restored. I dialed Sam. His voice, thick with sleep, answered, "Leo, what's going on?" "Sam, can I come over? Stay the night?" "What? It's nearly 11, man. Please, just please, I'll explain." A beat of silence. "You sound off. Everything okay?" "I just can't be here, in my apartment, not tonight." Another pause, longer this time. "All right, yeah, come on over." Relief washed over me, potent but incomplete. "Thanks, 20 minutes. I disconnected, looking down at Shadow. He gazed up, his intelligent eyes wide, then swiveled his head back towards the looming structure we'd fled. "Good boy," I whispered, my voice still frayed. "Such a good boy." The walk to Sam's was a blur, punctuated by Shadow's frequent backward glances and soft, warning rumbles. I never spent another night in that apartment. Returning the following day, bolstered by Sam's skeptical presence, felt like trespassing on haunted ground. Shadow refused to cross the threshold, planting himself firmly in the hallway, a low growl vibrating in his chest as he stared fixedly at the closed door. Inside, the scene was deceptively normal. The dining chair stood precisely where it always had, an island of benign domesticity, but the floor glittered with the remnants of the exploded light tube, and closer inspection revealed deep, parallel gouges scarring the hardwood near the chair. Forceful, deliberate marks, as if something heavy had been dragged protesting across the grain. I paid the penalty, broke the lease without hesitation, and took refuge with Sam until a new place could be secured. For months, Shadow slept not near my bed, but pressed tightly against me, a living anchor in the dark. He still does. Sometimes, in the quietest hours, his head will lift, his gaze will fix on an unoccupied chair, and that low, chilling growl will return. I've learned implicit trust in his perception. We vacate the room immediately, no questions asked, because I understand now. There are unseen currents in the world, entities that learn your name, entities that desire your presence, entities that stay. Shadow was my salvation that night. Without his instinct, his unwavering vigilance, the alternative scenarios remain unthinkable, relegated to the shadowed corners of my mind. My current apartment is miles away, 3rd floor, scrubbed clean of the past. Even the furniture is new. Shadow possesses a perfectly good dog bed, yet he eschews it, preferring the floor beside mine, a furry sentinel. Occasionally, I surface from sleep to phantom susurrations at the edge of audibility. Not words, just the texture of whispers. In those moments, Shadow is invariably already alert, head raised, scanning the penumbra. Low wattage lamps burn through the night now, a feeble concession, perhaps, as the darkness pooled in corners and beneath furniture seems somehow more profound, more patient. Empty chairs possess a particular malevolence. Research yielded nothing. The old building's history was disappointingly mundane, devoid of reported tragedy or spectral lore. Just bricks, mortar, and ordinary lives. Yet, the memory of that voice, the displaced chair, the impossible cold, remains irrefutable. The true horror arrived last week, a text message from Mrs. Petrova, still residing in that building. She'd heard my name, Leo, called in the hallway late one night. Was I back visiting, she wondered. My blood ran cold. I texted back a frantic warning. No, stay inside, lock your doors, don't answer to my name. Silence has been her only reply. Shadow sleeps even closer these nights, attuned to an unseen tension. Dogs perceive the frequencies we filter out, the shadows we dismiss. They stand guard against the realities we deny. I pen these final words from my new sofa. Shadow, curled at my feet, has just gone rigid. His head is up, ears pricked, his unwavering gaze fixed on the vacant armchair across the room. I must cease writing. We have to leave this space. But heed this. Should you find yourself alone in the quiet hours and a whisper brushes past carrying your name, observe your animal companion. Trust their fear. They perceive the fissures. And if you lack such a guardian, acquire one, or simply flee. Because some things, once they learn your name, never relinquish it. They merely wait. Shadow is growling. We're going now. He materialized the instant Elias found his seat, a silhouette against the bleeding velocity outside the train window. Keeping pace, impossibly, his gaze pierced the grimy glass, locking onto Elias as if the barrier were mere air. The carriage, sparsely populated, swam in a dim, aqueous light. The rhythmic percussion of wheels on steel was the only pulse in the silence. A knot of ice formed in Elias's gut. Nothing should exist out there, not alongside the hurtling metal beast. How could flesh and bone shadow such speed? Elias scrubbed damp palms against the rough denim of his trousers, leaning toward the pane, seeking a phantom platform, a hidden catwalk. Only the bruised smear of night rushed past. Yet the figure remained, suspended or sprinting, an enigma in motion. His attire whispered of bygone decades. The fabric, dense and dark, suggested a heavy coat, unsuitable for any modern journey. Upon his chest an emblem gleamed dully, a medallion perhaps, its form intricate and somehow wrong, a twisted sigil Elias couldn't decipher. It resonated with no known heraldry, no familiar iconography. A constricting band tightened around Elias's ribs. His heart hammered a frantic tattoo against them. He remained frozen, caught in that unwavering stare. The figure's eyes held no bewilderment, only a profound, unsettling expectation. A sudden lurch of the train, a metallic groan, jolted Elias. His gaze flickered towards the carriage's other occupants. Two souls adrift near the front, heads bowed in slumber or feigned oblivion, utterly untouched by the impossible spectacle outside. Back to the window. Still there. The train devoured the track, yet the watcher neither dwindled nor grew distant. A fixed point in the fluid darkness, perfectly aligned. His scrutiny felt like a physical weight, a spotlight rendering concealment futile. Elias's shoulders drew tight, his throat scraped dry. Action became imperative. This proximity, this relentless observation, was unbearable. Snatching his worn backpack, Elias navigated the aisle, selecting a seat further forward. He sank into it, expelling a ragged breath. A furtive glance confirmed the others remained inert, oblivious. An overhead light stuttered, casting brief, anemic pulses into the gloom, unnoticed. He compelled himself to face the window anew. Initially, just the hypnotic rush of blackness. Then, inevitably, him. Outside this different window, gaze unwavering, the strange insignia stark against his chest. Elias's heart leaped, a frantic bird against his ribs. His hands trembled. He pressed his palms flat against the seat's worn velour, seeking an anchor in its texture, a moment's grounding. He blinked hard, hoping fatigue had conjured a phantom, but the apparition held firm. The same archaic coat, the same penetrating stillness. He never blinked, just watched. Legs unsteady, Elias rose again, abandoning stealth, seeking only distance. He retreated to the carriage's rearmost row. The moment he sat, a tremor ran through the seat. The train clattered over a joint in the rails. A muffled thud echoed from somewhere above. And, inevitably, his eyes were drawn magnetically to the window. There, outside the glass, behind him now, still watching. Nausea surged. He scrambled up, making for the connecting door at the car's end. The cool metal of the handle bit into his palm. Through the door's window, he saw the figure gliding alongside, a phantom clinging to the train's flank as faint station lights streaked past, momentarily illuminating its persistent outline. Escape. The next station, any station. He had to disembark, dissolve back into the mundane world, away from that face, that stare. Breath hitched in his throat. His shirt clung, damp, to his back. He pushed into the adjoining carriage, hoping for sanctuary, for a conductor, for more faces. Empty. Rows of dark blue seats, aged and silent. The overhead lights here pulsed in a slow, maddening rhythm. His steps echoed unnervingly on the metal floor. He collapsed into a seat near the center. wrestling his breathing back from the brink of panic. Silence, save for the train's relentless motion. He listened for other footsteps, voices, nothing. After a minute, a terrible compulsion drew his eyes to the window. Present, right there, keeping pace. Elias's jaw clenched. A desperate curiosity warred with terror. He needed a closer look. Pressing his face near the cold glass, he saw the figure was perhaps only a foot away. No discernible movement in its limbs. It simply slid. Those eyes met his, and a chill, sharp as needle ice, traced its way up his spine. The symbol on its chest resolved slightly, an engraved plate etched with serpentine lines and baffling geometries. He recoiled, pushing away from the glass. The conductor's cabin. He had to reach it. Standing, he moved towards the front of this car, steps deliberate, fingers brushing seat backs, trembling. His legs felt leaden. He slid open the door to the next car, stepping through into the rush of wind between the carriages, the metal gangway rattling beneath his feet. This car held a few more souls, 3, maybe 4, scattered, hunched, some with hats obscuring their faces. Summoning a shred of courage, Elias approached a tall man in a drab jacket, tapping his shoulder. The man turned, bleary-eyed. Elias cleared his throat. "Did you see? Is there someone outside the window?" A frown, a shake of the head, a mumbled plea to be left alone. The man shifted pointedly away. He tried the next passenger, a woman who merely waved a dismissive hand without opening her eyes. His pulse roared in his ears. Panic prickled. He hurried forward, scanning for a uniform, finding none. Near the front door, an empty seat beckoned. He slumped into it, breath coming in harsh gasps. Minutes later, a change in rhythm. The grinding squeal of brakes, a perceptible slowing. Lights flared outside, a station approaching. The name on the sign was an illegible blur, but a platform materialized, starkly empty beneath the lights. The plan was starkly simple. Get off, summon a car, flee. The train shuddered to a halt. Elias was on his feet instantly, knees weak but resolve firm. He moved towards the opening doors as a few others disembarked. He stepped forward, reaching the threshold just as the doors hissed shut. He stabbed the open button. Unresponsive. He tugged at the seam. Immovable. Locked fast. Then the lurch of renewed motion. His heart hammered against his ribs. He pressed his palm flat against the door's window, watching the platform recede, swallowed by the returning darkness. A shaky sigh escaped him as he retreated to his seat, head swimming in bewildered dread. Why him? Why wouldn't the doors yield? A metallic scraping sound from outside. Elias glanced sideways. Him again, gliding past. He squeezed his eyes shut, a brief, futile prayer for illusion, then opened them. Still there, drifting. His throat constricted, breath shallowing, limbs suddenly heavy. Calm down. Find the crew. He walked to the car's front, finding a small door marked crew only. He knocked. Silence. Knocked again. Louder. Nothing. He tried the handle. Locked. The overhead speaker crackled. A burst of static, then silence. Trapped. The train hurtled onward. His phone remained stubbornly inert, screen dark, no signal bars. Turning, he checked the window. The figure hovered, the symbol on its chest catching an ephemeral gleam from some unseen light source. A shiver traced his spine. He returned to his seat, hands gripping his knees. The other passengers, those few remaining, seemed encased in their own worlds. one rustling a newspaper, another lost in the glow of a phone, none casting a glance outward. The tension knotted his shoulders, a dull ache blooming behind his eyes. Next stop, another chance. He sprang up, rushing the door. Again, a few passengers exited seamlessly. Again, as Elias approached, the door refused him, not even sliding an inch. He pounded on the glass, a frantic, useless gesture. No one looked back. They walked away onto the platform and the train pulled away, leaving him behind its sealed barrier. He staggered back, heat flushing his face, breath coming in ragged bursts. His hands shook violently. Something was actively keeping him here. Nausea churned. The watcher was omnipresent. Moving to the opposite side of the car only made it appear at that window instead, its dark coat billowing slightly in the unseen gale. The train's drone filled his ears. His eyes burned. In the window's reflection, he saw a pale, wide-eyed stranger, himself. Behind that reflection, the figure's expression remained immutable. It still clutched the symbol. Then, slowly, it lifted the object, bringing it closer to the glass, an explicit offering for inspection. Elias leaned in. A piece of metal, intricately scored with dark lines, script, runes, meaningless scratches. His mind felt fractured. Time lost its moorings. He drifted between cars, a prisoner pacing his mobile cell, torn between needing to track the figure and wishing desperately for it to vanish. He attempted conversation with an older man who brushed him off with a curt, "You're acting strange, sit down." The lights flickered more erratically now. A chill draft snaked through the carriage, then another garbled station announcement. His heart leaped. He stood by the doors, fists clenched, determination warring with despair. The instant the brakes shrieked, he slammed the button. The door cracked open, a sliver of platform, a glimpse of a bench, then slammed shut. He hammered the button, kicked the metal panel in raw frustration. The sound reverberated. A couple of heads turned, then dismissively turned away. His throat felt raw. He paced before the sealed exit until the train resumed its journey, his legs trembling beneath him. He couldn't ignore it, couldn't rationalize it. The figure remained. Each glance sent a tremor through him. His back was slick with sweat. He collapsed into a seat at random, letting his head fall back against the rest, closing his eyes, just for a second, to block it out. But the presence outside was palpable, an undeniable weight. Opening his eyes confirmed it. The figure, staring, somehow harder. "What do you want?" Elias whispered, the words barely audible above the train's thrum. His gaze snagged on the symbol again. The figure pressed it flat against the window, a deliberate presentation. Elias squinted. The etched lines, they seemed to form patterns, connections. Letters, a map. A strange compulsion stirred within him. His hand lifted, seemingly of its own volition, reaching for the cold glass. His fingertips made contact. On the other side, the figure mirrored the gesture, though only the chill of the pain met Elias's touch. A few seconds passed in this silent communion. His heart rate, though still frantic, eased slightly. Then, as if a point had been made, the figure withdrew its hand, its form sliding away from the window. A buffet of wind shook the carriage, momentarily obscuring his view. Elias's stomach clenched anew. He stood, peering down the aisle, hoping it had finally gone. Then he saw it at the next window along, moving steadily toward the front of the train. He followed, Some rational part screamed to stay put, but his feet obeyed a different imperative, carrying him forward with a numb tingling in his legs. He passed through the windy, clattering space between cars. Through the next door's window, he saw the figure paused outside, waiting. Elias slid the door open and entered. Another empty car, dimmer than the last, filled with vacant seats and the low buzz of failing lights. He walked halfway down the aisle when a harsh metallic screech erupted from outside like metal rending metal. He looked. The figure was pressing its symbol against the train's exterior frame. Sparks showered briefly. Elias flinched back, startled. The figure watched him, even as it dragged the symbol along the metal, carving lines into the train's skin, lines that mirrored those on the emblem itself. Elias gritted his teeth, helpless, hands shaken. Pressing his forehead to the cool glass, he saw the fresh gouges in the paintwork. The figure lifted its head, meeting his gaze. A fresh wave of cold washed over Elias. The train lurched, throwing him off balance. He grasped a seat back. When he looked again, the figure was moving on, continuing its slow progress forward. He followed. His footfalls echoed heavily. His throat was parchment dry. Pull the emergency brake, smash a window, scream. The thoughts flickered, but his body felt ensnared in a strange lethargy, his mind too scattered for decisive action. He simply trailed the figure, car after empty car. At each station stop, the ritual repeated. The brief hope, the rush to the door, the unyielding barrier, the other passengers departing while he remained trapped, the train pulling away into the night. Finally, the front car. A few seats, the dark expanse of track visible through the windscreen, and the locked door presumably leading to the operator's cabin. He tried it. Secured fast. No sign of the figure through the front glass. He turned, scanning the side windows. There, hovering near the locked cabin door, its external counterpart. It raised its hand, pressing the symbol to the window one last time. Elias watched, transfixed. The urge to shout, to plead for help, rose and died in his throat. Who would hear? The figure lowered the symbol. For the first time, Elias saw its lips move, shaping silent words. Inside the humming, rattling carriage, he heard nothing, but the movement conveyed a clear, chilling message. Stay. His breathing evened paradoxically. The terror remained, a cold bedrock beneath a strange new layer of resignation. Choice seemed illusory now. The train sped on. Stations flickered past, unremarked. The last few passengers had disembarked somewhere back down the line, leaving him utterly alone in the front car. The speaker system had fallen completely silent. The cabin door remained locked. His phone was a dead weight. He sat near the window, watching the watcher. Its face remained a mask. No malice, no sympathy, just profound stillness. Elias studied its eyes, searching for a clue, a hint of motive. His stomach twisted, but he stayed put, feeling the constant vibration of the tracks, the tremble of the seat beneath him. The journey stretched into an indeterminate passage of time, measured only by the rhythm of failed escapes. Each slowing, each station brought the same surge of adrenaline, the same frantic dash, the same immutable denial at the doors. Each time the figure was there, its presence a guarantee of his continued captivity. His muscles ached from sustained tension, his throat burned. Hours bled together. The dark landscape outside offered no landmarks. The train sighed mechanically. Then a subtle shift. The power seemed to dip, the lights flickering weakly before steadying at a lower intensity, and the train began to slow again. This time, no station lights pierced the oppressive darkness. They rolled to a halt on an isolated stretch of track, surrounded by absolute night. Elias stood, peered through the front window. Nothing but void. He checked the side. The figure remained, closer now. He tried the door, locked. He reached for the emergency release lever. It wouldn't budge. His arms trembled with futile effort. Looking back at the figure, he saw its hand resting on the exterior handle, holding it fast. The lights flickered violently, the engine's hum dying away completely. The interior lights persisted, but cast only a feeble, dying glow. The air grew thick, stale. Pressing his ear to the operator's cabin door yielded only silence. His knock went unanswered. His own reflection stared back from the darkened window, gaunt, exhausted. He turned back to the figure. It hovered, patient, waiting. Elias gripped the nearest seat back, legs threatening to buckle. Slow breaths, forced calm. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice a ragged whisper swallowed by the sudden stillness. No answer came, none expected, but it didn't leave. It pressed the symbol against the glass one final time. Elias leaned in, mesmerized by the intricate lines. A map? Instructions? Warnings? His head throbbed. He closed his eyes just for a moment, then opened them, unchanged. The train was utterly silent now, save for the almost imperceptible buzz of the dying lights. The hiss of released brakes echoed, then profound silence descended. Trapped. He understood now, with chilling certainty, that acceptance was perhaps the only path left. He sank back into his seat, every muscle taut, acutely aware of the figure just beyond the glass. This is his reality now. Sitting in the dim, silent carriage, the watcher eternally present outside the window. It hasn't faded, hasn't altered. It waits, and Elias knows he isn't going anywhere. The train remains motionless, the doors sealed. He has no concept of when movement might resume, or if release will ever come. He only knows he cannot leave until this spectral vigil concludes, and the figure will not abandon him until he understands. How long his composure will hold is uncertain, but choice has been stripped away. There is only the train, the darkness, and the unwavering presence outside his window. Until it ends, he is here, staring back. It began with the eyes, didn't it? That obsidian bloom swallowing the whites, a sudden void where humanity had resided moments before. That's when the certainty struck, cold and sharp. We were drowning in peril. A Tuesday night, typically dead quiet at the Serpent's Coil, had just curdled into a waking nightmare, the kind that clings to your waking hours forever after. Had I just trusted that prickle of unease, bolted the door early. But hindsight offers no sanctuary from the horrors that slithered in. Silas, that's me, poured drinks and polished the scarred mahogany of this bar top for nearly 10 years. The coil's no palace, etched with the rings of countless glasses and worn smooth by decades of elbows, but it's ours, our sanctuary. The regulars, they're the bricks and mortar. Even the odd dust-up felt manageable, familiar, until that night shattered the illusion of control. Tuesday. The game droned from the corner television, a backdrop to the low grumbles of the few patrons nursing their lagers. I was swiping a rag across the bar, only half attuned to old Cormac's rambling theories about ley lines and lunar cycles, when the front door sighed open. They didn't so much walk in as arrive, a ripple disturbing the stagnant air. 4 of them, 3 men, 1 woman, clad in severe dark attire that seemed too sharp, too clean for the coil's comfortable gloom. They moved with a disconcerting unity, gliding into a shadowed booth without a single exchanged word. Across the room, Eliza paused mid-pour, catching my gaze. Her slight, questioning shrug mirrored my own sudden disquiet. I smoothed my apron, a familiar ritual that felt flimsy now, and drifted towards their corner. "Evening," I offered, summoning the practiced bartender's grin. "What can I bring you?" Silence answered first. Then, as one, 4 heads swiveled towards me, their faces masks of unnerving neutrality. A shiver traced its way down my vertebrae, but professionalism held firm. The woman spoke finely, her voice a monotone instrument, utterly devoid of inflection. "4 glasses, your house red." "Right away." The words felt thick in my throat. Retreating to the bar, I felt the weight of their collective gaze, an invisible pressure against my back. My hands trembled as I poured the wine, ruby drops splattering onto the counter. "Steady there, Silas," Cormac rasped, peering over the rim of his spectacles. "Look like you just wrestled a ghost." A dry chuckle escaped me. "Just weary, Cormac, end of a long one." I delivered the glasses, placing them carefully on the table. The quartet remained utterly still, statues in the dim light. They made no move towards the wine, their vacant stares fixed on some unseen point beyond the far wall. Time bled away. The regulars, one by one, drifted out into the night, leaving behind a thickening silence punctuated only by the television's murmur and the clink of my own restless glass wiping. Soon, only Eliza, old Cormac, the silent watchers in the corner, and I remained beneath the low ceiling. The air grew heavy, oppressive. Closing time loomed, and the thought of asking the strange party to leave had just surfaced when Eliza gasped, a sharp intake of breath that cut through the quiet. I followed her terrified gaze to the corner booth. They were altering. It started, as I said, with the eyes, irises bleeding black until only fathomless pits remained. Then their skin began to ripple, shifting, taking on the pallor of wet ash, and their mouths, dear God, their mouths stretched, split, widened into impossible crescent grins bristling with needle-sharp teeth. I stumbled back, the clatter of fallen pint glasses echoing unnaturally loud in the sudden, awful stillness. The sound broke the spell. Cormac choked out a strangled cry, scrambling towards the exit. But one of them, they weren't human, not anymore, blurred across the room with speed that defied sight. A hand, now clawed and gray, shot out, clamping around Cormac's throat, hoisting him effortlessly off the floor. His legs kicked, a frantic, useless rhythm against the sudden silence. "Leave him." The shout tore from my own throat as I snatched a heavy whiskey bottle from the back bar. A pathetic defense, I knew, but inaction was unthinkable. The creature turned its head, the grotesque smile unwavering. Its voice, when it came, was a rasping chorus, seeming to emanate from the very shadows themselves. "We hunger," it grated. "You will Feed us. A sickening crack punctuated the statement. Cormac's struggles ceased. The light vanished from his eyes, his body slumping, a marionette with cut strings. Eliza screamed, a raw sound that jolted me from my paralysis. I vaulted the bar, grabbing her arm, hauling her towards the rear service door. "Run, Eliza, now!" I shoved her through first. We spilled into the narrow alley, the chill night air a brutal contrast to the suffocating terror inside. Relief was a fleeting phantom. 10 feet, maybe 12, before a shape coalesced from the deep shadows directly ahead. Eliza cried out, stumbling as she tried to reverse course. We spun, desperate, only to find another of the monsters blocking the alley's other mouth. Trapped, hemmed in by impossible predators. My thoughts raced, grasping for any sliver of hope. The cellar, the old access hatch hidden behind that leaning tower of empty kegs, a desperate gambit. "This way," I yelled, pulling Eliza towards the metallic heap. We scrabbled at the cold metal, the shriek of kegs scraping concrete deafening in the sudden hush. Behind us, the creatures advanced, their movement fluid, unnatural, terrifyingly silent save for the ragged, eager sound of their breathing. Closer, closer. There, the heavy wooden doors. I wrenched them open, the shriek of rusted hinges splitting the night. "In! Get in!" I practically threw Eliza down the steep, narrow stairs. I tumbled after, slamming the doors shut just as questing claws scraped against the exterior wood. My shaking fingers fumbled with the heavy, ancient padlock, finally snapping it closed. We huddled in the absolute darkness below, the frantic scrabbling and splintering wood from above our only company. The doors groaned under the assault. They wouldn't hold forever. What are they?" Eliza whispered, her voice ragged with fear. I shook my head, a useless gesture in the blackness. "Don't know. We need another way out." Feeling our way through the musty confines, stumbling over forgotten crates and spectral shapes draped in dust cloths, my hand brushed against cold metal. A flashlight. Its beam sliced through the Stygian gloom, revealing cobwebs thick as shrouds, and, on the far wall, scrawled in something dark and disturbingly flaked. Words. Words I'll carry etched behind my eyes until I die. They come when the veil is thin. Salt and iron will hold them back, but only the dawn can drive them away. "What's it mean?" Eliza breathed. Before I could hazard a guess, a deafening crash resonated from the top of the stairs. They were through. Instinct took over. My eyes snagged on an old iron fireplace poker leaning against a damp stone wall. Nearby, a torn sack spilled coarse rock salt, likely forgotten from winters past. I seized the poker, tossed the bag to Eliza. "Make a circle, around us, now." She didn't hesitate, her hands scooping and pouring, tracing a shimmering white line on the dirt floor. I stood braced, the iron heavy in my grip, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. They descended the stairs, their movements jerky, disjointed, utterly inhuman. As they reached the cellar floor, those abyssal eyes fixed on us, radiating pure predatory hunger. They advanced, but faltered abruptly at the salt line, recoiling as if striking an invisible barrier. Frustrated growls echoed in the confined space as they paced the circle's edge, unable to cross. For an eternity, it felt like, We stood within our fragile sanctuary. Each time a creature lunged, testing the boundary, the salt flared as if with inner light, driving them back. They hissed at the iron poker whenever I brandished it near. Hours crawled by. Then, subtly at first, a change began. Their movements grew sluggish, their forms less substantial, flickering at the edges. Their gray skin seemed to thin, becoming translucent. As the very first, faint fingers of dawn probed through the high, grimy cellar windows, a collective, unearthly shriek tore through the air. Their bodies dissolved, wavering like heat haze, melting into nothingness like mist touched by the morning sun. In moments, they were gone. Only the lingering stench of ozone and decay remained. We didn't leave the salt circle until the sun was high and golden, pouring through the windows, too paralyzed by fear to move sooner. Upstairs, the bar was a scene of utter devastation. Shattered glass, overturned furniture, and the still pale form of old Cormac by the ravaged door. We called the authorities, naturally, but what could we tell them? The truth was unthinkable, unspeakable. A robbery, we said, violent, tragic, gone terribly wrong. Their faces showed skepticism, but they took our statement. Eliza left the Serpent's Coil that very day. I don't hold it against her. The thought crossed my mind, believe me. Flee, forget. But something anchors me here. A duty, perhaps, to the memory of Cormac, to the sanctity violated, or maybe plain stubborn refusal to let the darkness win. I made changes. Salt lines every threshold now, discreetly drawn. Iron horseshoes, salvaged and hung, gleam above the doors. I lock up long before the witching hour, especially when the air feels thin, expectant. Sometimes, though, late at night, a new group might enter, moving with that too smooth synchronicity, their eyes holding shadows a little too deep. And I remember. I grip the iron poker I keep beneath the bar, and I watch, knowing that monsters are real, that they sometimes wear familiar faces, and that when night falls, they hunger still. It arrived on a Thursday, an interloper amidst the usual tide of circulars and solicitations. Just a plain, white envelope, stark against the patterned rug where the mail landed. My address, typed starkly, occupied the center. The corner where a sender might reside remained unnervingly blank. A tremor of unease, faint but distinct, prickled my fingers as I sliced it open. No corporate logo, no cheerful advertisement greeted me. Inside lay only a single sheet of paper, heavy, creamy, and utterly vacant. I held it aloft, tilting it towards the window, scrutinizing its texture, tracing its immaculate edges. Nothing. A puerile prank, perhaps? Annoyance flickered, displacing the initial disquiet. I discarded the envelope and laid the enigmatic sheet upon my kitchen table, already dismissing it as I moved through the rituals of my afternoon. Later, cocooned in the living room's twilight embrace, the table caught my eye. The envelope lay discarded, the paper a pale rectangle beside it. A small candle, my usual defense against the room's temperamental overhead light, cast dancing shadows. On impulse, governed by a curiosity I couldn't name, I retrieved the blank page. Holding it near the candle's gentle flame, I felt its heat kiss my skin. Then something shifted. As the paper drew nearer the flickering light, obsidian shapes began to bloom across its surface, coalescing like ink drawn by an unseen nib. I leaned closer, straining to decipher the emergent script. The nascent curve of a letter, the beginning of a word, visible for a heartbeat, then dissolving back into the paper's creamy void. Again, I tried, angling the sheet, bringing it closer still. For one crystalline second, the letters held, sharp, black, undeniable. Fragments surfaced, something about watching, something about you, before they ghosted away. A strange, breathless pressure built in my chest, a precursor to panic. I set the paper down abruptly, extinguishing the candle with a sharp puff, my heart executing a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The remainder of the evening was a ruin, my thoughts circling back relentlessly to that fugitive message. Under the glare of lamps held against mirrors, the paper remained stubbornly blank, yielding no secrets to ordinary light. Only the candle's caress had summoned those fleeting words. Dinner was a tasteless affair, television a meaningless flicker. Eventually, inevitably, I found myself back at the table. The candle was relit, its flame a tiny, defiant eye in the gloom. Once more, I presented the paper to its warmth. Faint outlines materialized, ghosts struggling for substance. I held my breath, leaning in until my neck cramped. Darker now, clearer for an instant. Do not. Then gone. A stiffness seized my jaw. A third attempt, the paper brought perilously close to the licking flame, yielded only more tantalizing shards. Do not. I am. You. They pulsed into view, then retreated, mocking my focus. A knot formed between my shoulder blades. A faint tremor started in my legs. Defeated, I surrendered to the night. The following day was an exercise in forced normalcy. Work, commute, a solitary meal, all performed under the pretense that the letter was insignificant. A lie. A deep, insistent hum beneath the surface demanded resolution. That night, the ritual resumed. Kitchen table, solitary candle, the house steeped in darkness and silence save for the sound of my own unsteady breathing. I held the paper to the flame. The letters flickered, appearing and vanishing too rapidly for comprehension. I experimented, moving the sheet with painstaking slowness, adjusting the angle, desperate to capture the whole elusive sentence. The paper seemed to warm unnaturally in my grasp, while a contrary chill traced patterns down my spine with each spectral appearance and disappearance. My palm grew slick. I wiped it absently on my trousers. And then I began to hear it. Not the wind sighing against the eaves, nor the ancient groans of the house settling. These were sounds closer, infinitely stranger. Whispers, faint and dry, rustling from the room's shadowed corners. I froze, my throat constricting. Setting the paper down carefully, I scanned the familiar space. Empty. Yet the susurrus persisted, seeming to emanate from the walls themselves, from beneath the table, from the air just behind my chair. The sound was indistinct, less words than the sibilant escape of air through unseen barriers. The fine hairs on my arms lifted, my heart hammered, a wave of dizziness washed over me. Stay calm, I commanded myself, the words a silent mantra. Reaching for the paper again, my hand trembling slightly, I held it once more to the flame. The letters flashed. Do not ignore. Before the rest could register, they dissolved. My breath hitched. The whispers swelled, closer now, tinged with an anger, punctuated by something like a dry hiss. Who's there? The question emerged as a shaky croak. Silence answered, though the whispering continued its insidious murmur. My stomach twisted into a knot, sweat beaded on my forehead. Feigning a bravado I didn't feel, I rose, circled the room, peered behind curtains, tested window locks. nothing. The whispering ebbed and flowed but never ceased, never coalesced into anything intelligible. After an hour, maybe more, exhaustion claimed me. I blew out the candle and retreated to bed, the unanswered question hanging heavy in the air. Sleep was a fraught, shallow thing, punctuated by wakened sweats and a racing pulse. On the third night, I brought technology to the seance. My phone, propped against a salt shaker, its voice recorder active, its camera lens aimed at the unfolding drama. The candle sat centered, its flame a lonely beacon. My hand, I noted with detachment, was far from steady. The paper, innocuous under the candlelight, felt heavier tonight. I lifted it. The flickering script appeared. Do not ignore this warning. I fought to hold the paper still, my eyes devouring the next phrase. I am watching you. Vanished. A sharp exhale escaped me. Immediately, the whispering returned, this time intimately close, directly behind my chair. I spun around. Emptiness greeted me. On the phone screen, I could see myself, the paper, the candle, but no ethereal text. The microphone hissed faintly. One more try. The paper met the flame. A longer glimpse this time, searing itself onto my memory. Do not ignore this warning. I am watching you. Do not try to run. I know where you are. My heart felt bruised from its frantic beating. Sweat trickled down my spine. My hands shook violently, nearly sending the paper into the flame. The voices intensified, a swirling vortex of malice. Something intangible brushed my arm. I flinched, looking wildly. Nothing. With a strangled gasp, I snuffed the candle and flicked on the overhead light. The whispers died instantly. The kitchen snapped back into its mundane reality. I checked the phone. The video showed only me reacting to empty air. The audio track held my breathing. The candle's crackle, nothing more. Frustration warred with a profound unease. I knew what I'd seen, what I'd heard. It wasn't imagination. My pulse still throbbed erratically, my stomach cramped, my legs felt like water as I stood. I prowled the house then, a nervous sentry, checking rooms, flinging open closets, peering behind doors, certain of an intruder. The house remained stubbornly empty, settling into a heavy silence. The next night, a new strategy. 3 candles, arranged in a triangle, hoping their combined light might yield clarity. Midnight found me waiting, the house utterly still. I extinguished all other lights. The trio of flames swayed, casting elongated, jittery shadows. I raised the paper. The letters flashed, faster now, more fragmented than ever. I tried reading them aloud as they surfaced, a desperate tactic. Do not ignore this warning, I recited, voice tight. I am watching you. Do not try to run. I know where you are. I know what you... Gone again. As I spoke, the air grew perceptibly colder. My breath plumed faintly. The stiffness in my neck became an iron band. The whispers began, louder than before, chillingly distinct words emerging from the chorus. Listen. Stay still. A definite presence materialized behind me, a phantom warmth like breath on my nape. I jerked around. Nothing. Only a faint, stale odor, reminiscent of old sweat and dust, lingered in the air. I forced my gaze back to the paper. Blank. Utterly blank. I lowered it. The whispering persisted. What do you want? The words scraped my throat. The candle flames dipped violently, threatening to extinguish. The sibilant chorus intensified. My palms were slick, my stomach churning. A tremor ran through my entire body. Standing abruptly, I felt a distinct tug at my shirt hem. I stumbled back, nearly upsetting the table. The candles wobbled precariously but held. "Stop it!" I yelled, the sound raw. The whispering receded, then faded entirely, leaving only the echo of my own ragged breathing. I hit the light switch. The kitchen felt small, sterile. The silence pressed down, thick and suffocating. Dizziness washed over me. Sleep was impossible that night. I sat vigil on the couch, every light blazing, the letter lying on the coffee table, a simple, white, terrifying rectangle. Should I destroy it? Burn it? The impulse warred with a deeper fear, an irrational certainty that disposal would only escalate things. I remained awake, watching the paper, every creak of the floorboards, every tap of branch against window pane, sending jolts of adrenaline through my system. Another night, another variation. A scented candle this time, vanilla, pilfered from the bathroom. Perhaps the wax held some significance. I lit its smaller, steadier flame, held up the paper. Brief flashes. "Do not ignore. I watch you, cannot hide. You cannot." Vanished. The whispering commenced, but softer, a muted hiss near my ear, like speech attempted through clenched teeth. My chest tightened, restricting my breath. "I'm here," I managed, striving for calm. "I see your message. What am I supposed to do?" The silence stretched, then a single, chilling whisper breathed against my senses. "Obey." A jolt, cold and electric, shot down my spine. My eyes stung. Sweat traced a path down my cheek. I wiped it away fiercely. I persisted, moving the paper with glacial slowness, desperate to piece together the whole. Futile. The letters danced, teased, threatened, always incomplete. "Do not ignore. I know you will." Then oblivion. The whispers seemed attuned to my frustration, swelling each time the message fragmented, surrounding me, pressing in, trapped. My throat felt like sandpaper. My hands shook so badly I nearly fumbled the paper into the flame, snatching it back at the last second. A pattern emerged. The whispers always began after. I managed to read a fragment, as if some unseen sentinel permitted glimpses but punished sustained comprehension, stoking fear, demanding a submission I couldn't define. I abandoned finesse. Standing, candle lit, I held the paper at arm's length, bringing it slowly closer, just until the letters sparked. The instant they appeared, I tried yanking it back. No use, they vanished regardless. I slammed my fist onto the table, a crack of sound in the tense quiet. The whispers surged. Teeth clenched, I fought the urge to scream. My body ached with accumulated tension, my neck rigid. My heart hammered, a painful drum against my ribs. After nights blurred into a cycle of dread and futility, I stopped the experiments. No more recordings, no different candles, just me, the single flame, the paper, and the inevitable descent into fear. Each night, the same ritual, the same fragmented threats, the same suffocating curtain of whispers thickening the air. Exhaustion became my default state. My eyes were perpetually bloodshot. A constant tremor lived in my hands. Food lost its appeal. Every noise became a potential threat. Door locks were checked and rechecked. Sleep, when it came, was haunted by the sensation of being watched, of quiet, unseen breathing at the foot of my bed. I never deciphered the full message. Only the chilling fragments remained branded into my mind. Do not ignore this warning. I am watching you. Do not try to run. I know where you are. I know what you do. You cannot escape. Obey. Each session left me depleted, shaking, steeped in a fear that gnawed deeper with every attempt. The whispers never failed to answer the candle's flame. One final night. I told myself this was it. I sat in the darkness, lit the candle, raised the paper, read the familiar fleeting words, watched them dissolve, and waited. The whispers rose, swirling, raising goose flesh, tightening muscles, accelerating my breath until I felt faint. My pulse roared in my ears. The voices climbed in pitch and volume. "I've had enough," I shouted, the words torn from me. "Stop!" They didn't. With a surge of desperate finality, I seized the letter, crumpled it fiercely, jammed it back into its plain white envelope. Leaving the candle burning defiantly on the table, I fled the room. The moment I crossed the threshold, the whispering ceased, as if I had stepped out of a localized pocket of nightmare. That envelope now resides deep within a locked drawer. Sometimes, late at night, standing near it in the dark, I imagine I hear a faint, dry rustling, the echo of those voices. But I don't open the drawer. I keep the lights on. I avoid candles. The tension hasn't entirely left my house, but it's muted. Who sent the letter? Why? The questions remain unanswered, likely unanswerable. All I know is that seeking the truth, trying to read that heat-born script, invited only escalating terror and the company of unseen, whispering tormentors. Now, I choose uncertainty. It's a colder companion than knowledge, perhaps, but far safer than standing in the dark, bathed in sweat and candle flame, listening. I may never know the full message, but I will never again invite it into the light. Sanity demands that boundary. Midnight bled across the city, born on a storm that had shrieked for hours. Rain, a relentless fusillade, assaulted Alara's window panes. Thunder fractured the night, shaking the apartment's old bones, teasing the electric lights into sputtering fits. Alone, she courted the fragile solace of candlelight, twin flames dancing on the scarred tabletop, a heavy torch resting nearby, a bulwark against encroaching darkness. Outside, the world dissolved into rain-slicked obsidian, streets utterly forsaken. Television had offered only a muted babble beneath the storm's roar. Surrender came easily, leaving her adrift, watching wax weep, listening to the sky's artillery batter the building. Time lost meaning until the sound surfaced, a faint scritch, almost swallowed by the deluge. Imagination, perhaps? No. It returned, a delicate, insistent friction against the heavy grain of her front door. Alara went rigid, breath caught, straining against the storm's cacophony. The rain hammered, a wall of noise, yet beneath it, undeniably, the scraping persisted. Slow, measured, like talons tracing wood. Her gaze locked onto the door, a frantic pulse beginning its climb. No visitors were due, not now, not in this maelstrom. Wind-flung debris, she reasoned. A branch, perhaps? Yet the sound held a disquieting rhythm, a persistence that spoke not of nature but intent. Louder now, sharper, something, someone, waited just beyond the threshold. A clammy chill traced her spine. Rising felt like moving through water, every instinct screaming retreat. The torch beam, activated with a trembling thumb, sliced the gloom. Slow steps echoed her own thudding heart. As she neared, silence fell abruptly, the scratching replaced by a thick, expectant hush. Only the downpour drummed its ceaseless rhythm. Had she conjured it from the storm's fury? A phantom noise born of isolation? Then a dull thump. Solid, like a fist wrapped in cloth. Followed immediately by the scratching, harder, demanding. A startled gasp escaped her. Closer still, compelled against her will, she pressed her eye to the peephole's distorted lens. Nothing but swirling darkness. Rain painting abstract terrors on the glass. Yet the scraping continued, tireless, relentless. Fear, cold and sharp, coiled deep within her gut. Whatever lurked outside possessed a terrifying patience. Retreating a step, the torch clutched like a useless talisman. Her mind splintered. Call for aid? But turning her back on that door felt like an invitation. Just the storm, she chanted silently. Someone stranded, needing shelter. The thought offered no comfort. A primal wrongness permeated the air. Suddenly, a voice seeped through the wood, muffled yet distinct, sending ice through her veins. "Let me in." Low, a near whisper. "Please, need help." Alara stood rooted, breath trapped, pulse frantic. Another knock, louder. "Please," the voice frayed with desperation. "It's bad out here, I'm afraid." What to do? A flicker of empathy warred with the overwhelming, visceral certainty of danger. Keep it locked. Her palm slicked the torch casing. "I won't hurt you." The voice softened, coaxing, insidious. "Just let me inside." She swallowed thickly, fighting for calm against the tempest within and without. Alone, utterly alone. A step back, then another. Her own mind screaming warnings. A violent crack reverberated through the room as the door shuddered in its frame. Ilara flinched, the torch nearly slipping. He was trying to force it. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. She stumbled backward, spine hitting the cool plaster, cornered. "Let me in," the voice erupted, desperation replaced by raw fury. "You have to." Silence was her only answer, breath held tight, body rigid, knuckles white on the torch. Another blow struck the door, each impact echoing in the hollow space of the apartment. Flee? The bedroom lock? But even as she pivoted, a new sound froze her. The metallic click-scrape of the lock mechanism being manipulated. Ice flooded her veins. He was picking the lock. Panic surged. Blocked the door. Her shaking hands seized a slender console table from the entryway, shoving it clumsily against the wood. The scratching ceased. A beat of silence. Then a low, dark chuckle slithered under the door, raising the hairs on her arms. "That won't stop me." The voice dripped malice. "I always get in." She didn't answer. Couldn't. Back pressed to the wall, heart a frantic drum against the storm's rhythm, his taunting voice filled the silence. "Call help." Her fingers, clumsy with fear, fumbled her phone from her pocket. 911. Pressed to her ear, the line emitted only dead air. The storm's fury had severed her last link. Utterly cut off. Alone. Another furious bang rattled the barricade. The table legs groaned, wood splintering. Retreating towards the kitchenette, her hand closed around the cold steel handle of a chef's knife. A flimsy shield. "Open the door!" Fury vibrated through the wood. "Last chance!" Panic crested, a suffocating wave. Run? The fire escape? Too close to him. Then, silence. The assault ceased. No banging, no scratching, only the ceaseless drumming of rain. Ilara held her breath, listening. every nerve strained. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, receded down the corridor outside. A shaky sigh escaped her lips, relief washing through her in a dizzying flood. He'd given up. Gone. Minutes stretched, marked only by the storm's lament. The apartment felt vast and empty again. Slowly, she lowered the knife, the frantic tempo in her chest beginning to subside. That's when she heard it. A delicate tick scrape, impossibly near, not from the door, from the window. Her blood chilled, nausea churning. A dreadful compulsion drew her gaze upward. Pressed hard against the rain-streaked glass, a face, his face, eyes wide, locked onto hers. A smile stretched his lips, cold, predatory, utterly chilling. Alara stumbled back, mind reeling. The third floor, no balcony, no ledge, impossible. Yet there he was, the smile widening, eyes glinting with dark amusement. He tapped the glass, a sharp, rhythmic sound. His lips moved, forming silent words she understood with sickening clarity. "I'm coming in." No conscious thought remained, only instinct. She turned and fled. Keys, phone snatched in a blind grasp. The storm, safety, anything but this. The front door slammed open behind her as she sprinted down the echoing hallway, the phantom weight of his gaze burning her back. Don't look back. Run. Heart bursting, lungs screaming, she plunged into the night. The rain hit like a physical blow, instantly blinding, soaking. Down the slick steps she scrambled, collapsing onto the pavement, shaken uncontrollably. How long she huddled there, drenched and broken, before coherent thought returned, she couldn't say. Eventually, trembling fingers found her phone again, seeking a signal, finding one blocks away. The police came, lights strobing against the downpour. They swept through her small apartment, methodical, calm, found nothing. No forced entry, no disturbed dust, no footprints beyond her own panicked tracks, no sign anyone had been there. But Alara knew. She knew the face at the window, the voice at the door, the scraping that heralded its arrival. He was real. And somewhere in the rain-lashed darkness or the quiet spaces between breaths, he was still waiting, still watching, ready to get in. A dissonance settled over the lake house during my second week. Not mere unease, but a palpable wrongness. It manifested in the deep hours, a rhythmic splintering of wood from the perimeter darkness. Snap, silence, snap, silence, like measured footfalls tracing the boundary of my land. Wind, I reasoned initially, or some nocturnal beast. Yet the cadence felt deliberate, unnatural. Each recurrence sent a jolt through my chest, pulling me bolt upright in bed, breath catching, eyes fixed on the black mirror of the window pane. Venture out? Into that unseen theater? Unthinkable. Morning would bring clarity, I lied to myself, though dawn only ever delivered a lingering film of dread, a tension coiled tight in my gut. Solitude had been the lure, a sanctuary sought for uninterrupted creation. This cabin, nestled against the placid lip of the water, walled on three sides by an impenetrable weave of forest, promised just that. Isolation was the architect of my anticipated peace. No rumble of engines, no distant voices, only the sigh of wind through pines, the murmur of the lake. The first week unfolded as envisioned. Dawn rituals of coffee, the quiet hum of productivity against nature's backdrop. A perfect equilibrium, I believed. Ephemeral, it turned out. The third morning revealed anomalies etched into the earth beside the cabin. Not footprints, not initially, but deliberate arrangements. Twigs and fallen branches coerced into crude arcs, repeat in clusters like some cryptic sigil. Half circles, organic yet purposeful, suggesting something dragged, not placed. A shiver traced my spine, recognizing the faint trail they formed, emerging from the forest's shadowed maw toward my dwelling. I knelt, fingers brushing a slender bent stick. It yielded with a sharp crack, the sound echoing disproportionately in the stillness. My mouth went dry. Who or what indulged in such nocturnal artistry out here? Dismissing it felt necessary. I gathered the brittle arrangements, casting them back into the wood's embrace. Days later, they materialized anew in the same location. Smaller this time, the pattern subtly altered, yet undeniably the same circling signature. Again, the impression of passage, of lupin steps, but no discernible print of boot or paw. A prickling heat bloomed on my forearms. The ground seemed to tilt slightly. Was I magnifying trifles, assigning agency to the wind's chaotic dance? I retreated indoors, forcing the explanation upon myself. Sleep became elusive, haunted by the image of those earthen crescents. Around the witching hour, the familiar percussion returned. Crunch, pause, crunch, emanating from just beyond the fence line. Slow, deliberate steps crushing leaves and twigs. My hand closed around a heavy flashlight, but my feet remained rooted indoors. The threshold felt impossibly vast. 10 minutes I stood sentinel in the hallway's dim light, wrestling the courage to confront the window. My stomach clenched. My own respiration sounded unnervingly loud in the quiet house. Finally, a cautious approach to the living room window. A sliver of vision through the blinds. Blackness met my gaze. Then, ripping through the night from the forest's depths, came a protracted howl. Not wolf nor coyote. I knew the wild's chorus from childhood. This was aberrant, its pitch unsettlingly high, resonant, raising the fine hairs along my nape. A tremor started in my knees. I recoiled from the window, seeking the house's illusory center. Dawn painted the lake in hues of pearl and rose. Seeking solace by the water's edge, I walked the shore, the surface a tranquil mirror. Small waves whispered against the reeds. Then, peripherally, a presence. To my left, near a dense cluster of bulrushes, perhaps 20 yards distant, stood a figure. Tall, unnervingly so, draped in what seemed like verdant moss or slick algae. Its limbs hung disproportionately long, pendant arms nearly brushing the ground. I froze, transfixed. A tingling sensation crawled across my scalp, my chest constricted. I blinked, a reflex against the impossible, and it vanished. Only a subtle widening ripple disturbed the water where it had stood. Cold perspiration beaded on my forehead. I scrambled to the spot, heart hammering, but found nothing save the reeds swaying innocently in the breeze. But the mud betrayed it. Impressed upon the damp bank were footprints, stark and undeniable. Large, elongated ovals devoid of any familiar toe indentations, more like smooth, deep impressions. My pulse became a frantic drum against my ribs. I forced myself to crouch, examining the bizarre spoor. They led away from the water, a clear track swallowed by the dense undergrowth fringing the woods. A cloying miasma hung in the air here, the scent of decay, of leaf mold and stagnant water. Compelled, I followed the prints a short distance until the forest floor, thick with detritus, obscured the trail completely. That evening, the house blazed with artificial light. a futile bulwark against the encroaching dark. Concentration fractured, my thoughts circle back to those unnatural prints. I tried distracting myself with old films, but every sigh of the wind, every rustle outside commanded a pause, an intense, strained listening. Then, near midnight, a flicker, peripheral motion glimpsed at the side window. I surged to my feet, my heart leaping into my throat. Pressing close to the glass, I scanned the darkness outside. Nothing, but the pane bore a faint, greasy smudge, as if something had leaned against it. My hand trembled uncontrollably as I fumbled with the lock, verifying its hold. A tour of the house confirmed every door and window secured, yet the feeling of vulnerability, of being utterly exposed, remained palpable. The subsequent days passed without direct confrontation, yet the unease intensified. Each dawn revealed fresh disturbances, leaves strewn in peculiar configurations, more of the twig and branch semicircles meticulously laid out. The alien howl occasionally punctuated the nights, sometimes joined by a faint, dry clicking, reminiscent of stones being tapped together, emanating from the woods. Though I never saw the figure clearly by day, fleeting movements sometimes snagged my peripheral vision deep within the tree line. I took to leaving every light ablaze throughout the night, both inside and out. I even installed powerful motion-activated floodlights in the backyard, hoping their sudden glare might deter whatever lurked beyond the lawn. The very next night, I awoke to their rhythmic cycling. Click on darkness, click on darkness. Pulled from sleep, I donned a jacket and edged toward the back door, easing it open a mere crack. The floodlight flared, bathing the yard in stark white, illuminating the distant tree line. Then, blackness. 30 seconds ticked by. Light flooded the space again. Empty. Every nerve strained, listening. A dull pulse throbbed behind my temples. I stood breathing the chill night air in shallow gasps, waiting. Hesitantly, I stepped onto the porch. The sensor tripped instantly, the beam spearing across the grass. And there it stood, near the fence line, motionless, the tall silhouette draped in its mantle of dark vegetation. It faced me, though I could discern no eyes, only the suggestion of an elongated head, perhaps hooded or malformed. Its arms, impossibly long, hung limply past its hips. A thick knot formed in my throat. I raised my own flashlight, thumb finding the switch. As its beam cut through the dark towards the fence, the creature moved. A blur of motion so swift it defied comprehension, vanishing behind the trunk of a broad oak. A final glimpse of something slick, limb or appendage, disappearing into shadow. My throat felt like sandpaper. Advancing 2 tentative steps, I swept the flashlight beam across the fence line. Nothing. My skin felt feverish despite the cold air. The frantic thudding in my ears was my own heart. I retreated back into the house, the deadbolt rasping shut. Leaning against the door, back pressed hard against the wood, I stood frozen, eyes stinging from lack of blinking, listening with an intensity that hurt. Silence. Eventually, I returned to bed, but sleep was a forgotten country. I lay fully clothed atop the covers, staring at the ceiling until exhaustion threatened, only to be jolted back by that same distant, gut-wrenching howl piercing the night. Daylight, I reasoned, offered a shield. Come morning, clad in sturdy boots and armed with a long branch for probing, I ventured into the forest's embrace. Cool air, thick with the scent of damp earth, closed around me beneath the canopy. I moved with deliberate slowness, pausing frequently, straining to decipher every rustle, every bird call. For 20 minutes, only the expected sounds of the woods accompanied me. Then I stumbled upon it, a distinct trail where the undergrowth lay crushed and flattened, as if something of significant size had recently passed. The track led deeper into the woods. Following cautiously, navigating moss-slicked logs and dense ferns, I emerged into a small, shadowed clearing. The ground here was soft mud, and imprinted deeply within it were the footprints, kin to those by the lake, but larger still, the familiar smooth ovals spaced for an unnaturally long stride. The air hung heavy with that same fetid odor, rot, decay, the stagnant breath of a hidden mire. My nose wrinkled in disgust. Kneeling, I pressed my palm against the edge of one print. The mud beneath felt cool, still damp. My pulse quickened. I straightened slowly, scanning the silent clearing. No breeze stirred the leaves, no birds sang. The stillness itself felt menacing. A prickling awareness crawled over my scalp. Retreating step by cautious step, I backed out of the clearing, away from the tracks. The thought of encountering the source, here in its domain, was intolerable. Evenings became sieges. Blinds drawn tight, lamps casting defiant pools of light against the encroaching gloom. The nights offered a rotating chorus of disquiet. The sharp retort of snapping branches, the distant, unnerving howl, and sometimes those dry, pebble-like clicks seemingly orbiting the house. A constant tightness gripped my chest, a low hum of fear vibrating beneath my skin. I reached out to a friend via phone, craving connection, yet offered only a diluted version of the truth. Vague mentions of unsettling night sounds. Raccoons, he suggested easily. Deer, perhaps? I let the assumption stand. How could I articulate the rest? The sheer incredulity it would invite felt like another form of isolation. Around 10 one night, restlessness gnawed at me. A need to visually confirm the perimeter's emptiness, a desperate bid for momentary peace. Clutching flashlight and phone, I eased open the front door and stepped onto the porch. The familiar yellow halo of the porch light illuminated a small circle of grass. Beyond lay impenetrable shadow. I scanned the visible yard. Stillness. Cautiously, I began walking toward the lake, placing each foot with care, my breath pluming in the frigid air. Halfway across the lawn, a low clicking sound emanated from the darkness to my left. My muscles locked, my stomach plummeted. I snapped the flashlight beam in that direction. A tall form instantly recoiled, darting behind the massive trunk of an ancient maple. Just a flash. Something slick, greenish, caught in the light. Blood surged, roaring in my ears, my pulse a heavy throb. Retreating slowly, keeping the light trained ahead, refusing to turn my back. The clicking intensified, seeming to echo now, bouncing between the unseen trees. My jaw clenched tight. Backward step followed backward step, until the relative safety of the porch boards was beneath my feet again. Back inside, the deadbolt slammed home. My hands were trembling violently, breath coming in ragged, shallow bursts. A vice seemed to squeeze my chest, my throat tight and constricted. A frantic circuit of the house ensued, fingers verifying every window latch, every lock. Then I collapsed into a living room chair, the house ablaze with light, the flashlight a heavy talisman in my white-knuckled grip. My legs felt strangely weak, prone to sudden twitches whenever the wind rattled the siding. Sleep was unthinkable. I remained awake, vigilant, listening to the house breathe around me, listening for the sounds beyond the walls. The motion sensors outside blinked on and off sporadically throughout the long night, but I lacked the will, or perhaps the folly, to investigate further. Now, dusk itself triggers a physical response. My muscles knot involuntarily, a clammy sweat breaks out, my mind racing with visions of the shape in the shadows. There has been no direct confrontation, no attack, yet the pervasive sense of being observed, studied, is undeniable. The cold calculation of a predator assessing its quarry. A chill dread settles deep in my stomach whenever I move through my own home. My phone is a constant companion, clutched tightly, emergency numbers poised. But what words could possibly convey this reality? Help? A tall, moss-draped entity is methodically circling my property. The absurdity is its own prison. Flee? The instinct screams yes, yet some stubborn, perhaps foolish part of me resists, demanding comprehension before abandonment. Each night is a deeper descent. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow, fractured, pursued under the glare of multiple lamps. Bedroom, hallway, corner floor lamp, a constellation against the vast darkness. Illusory safety, perhaps, but necessary. My days begin with a ritualistic patrol of the property line, searching for evidence. More often than not, I find it. Those signature oval depressions in soft earth or mud, always tracing the periphery. I follow them until they inevitably dissolve into the dense woods. Sometimes I discover trees bearing long, vertical scars slashed into their bark, as though something sharp, clawed perhaps, had raked down their trunks. Tracing these grooves with a fingertip sends a tremor through my hand, accelerates my pulse. I scan the surrounding trees, half expecting to see it standing sentinel behind me. Occasionally, a flicker of movement teases the edge of my sight, but a swift turn always reveals only empty woods. Denial is no longer an option. The evidence is tangible, the nightly tightening in my throat visceral. It is real. What it desires, why it lingers, how to repel it, these questions remain unanswered, terrifyingly blank. My defenses are meager, light, locks, and the patient endurance until dawn. Yet a certainty festers deep within. This is merely prelude. It's only a matter of time before proximity shrinks, before it crosses the threshold from periphery to presence, before it steps fully into the yard, onto the porch, before it tries the door. The thought alone lands like a physical blow, leaving me breathless, teetering on the precipice of panic. I sit now, bathed in the artificial daylight of my living room. Committing this to words is the only anchor in the storm. Outside, the wind gathers voice. The motion sensor punctuates the darkness with intermittent flares. Branches scrape and whisper against the walls. My gaze remains tethered to the windows, scanning the black panes. My mouth is parched. Swallowing feels difficult. A chill resides in my fingertips. I am waiting for the silhouette to resolve itself against the night. I cannot see it, not yet, but its presence feels absolute. Concealed behind an oak, perhaps, or crouched beneath the low deck, an unseen ear attuned to my every shift and sigh within these walls. My mind circles relentlessly around the inevitable moment I must next step outside after dark. possessed by the chilling conviction that it will be there, waiting. How much longer can this vigil last? How much longer can I endure? The lock cylinder turned with a whispery click. Bone-weary, Elias nudged the door open, the promise of collapse onto questionable bedding a siren song after the day's endless asphalt ribbon. Yet, as artificial light flooded the space, a pinpoint reflection flared aberrant in the mirror's grimy corner. He leaned, drawn by morbid curiosity, and an icy dread coiled in his gut as recognition dawned. A lens, concealed yet utterly stark. In that instant, the truth crystallized. This wasn't just a haven of last resort. It was a meticulously baited snare. Elias, purveyor of goods across state lines, knew motels. He'd known the sterile embrace of chains and the dubious comforts of establishments where sleep felt like a gamble against unseen contagions. But the Flicker Light Motel, oh, nothing had primed him for this particular brand of violation. 14 hours the road had held him captive, his eyelids' anchors dragging him toward slumber. The flicker light's sputtering neon sign, glimpsed through a haze of fatigue, had appeared as deliverance. Its dilapidated facade screamed neglect, certainly, but exhaustion is a poor bargainer in the desolate hours. The transaction at the front desk should have tripped an alarm. The proprietor, Silas, a gaunt figure with eyes like chipped obsidian that perpetually avoided direct contact, had shown an unnerving curiosity. Duration of stay? Anyone awaiting his arrival? Ephemeral. Elias had managed, stifling a yawn that cracked his jaw. Departing at dawn. Silas offered a skeletal nod, a cryptic smirk tightening the corners of his mouth as he slid the key across the scarred counter. Sleep soundly, he'd murmured, a peculiar resonance in the phrase sending an involuntary shudder through Elias. Now, confronted by the unblinking eye embedded in his temporary wall, those words echoed with sinister implication. His thoughts scrambled. Was this some squalid voyeuristic enterprise, or did darker currents flow beneath? Forcing a ragged breath, Elias imposed order on the chaos within. One camera implied a network. Unearthing them was paramount before any escape attempt could be conceived. He began, methodically, in the cramped bathroom, probing each fixture, each tile. Predictably, another lens stared back, disguised as an innocuous screwhead within the shower nozzle. His skin crawled, imagining the parade of unaware guests exposed in their most private states. Returning to the main room's oppressive stillness, his search yielded two more. One secreted within the television remote's plastic shell, another embedded in the digital clock's impassive face. Each unmasking amplified the sense of defilement, of being utterly ensnared. He sank onto the dubious quilt edge, head cradled in his hands. The options felt terrifyingly narrow. Staying was unthinkable. Yet midnight had passed. The nearest town was a distant memory, and Silas. What reaction would his discovery provoke? As if summoned by his dread, his mobile phone vibrated against the cheap particle board nightstand. An unknown number. The text glowed malevolently. Enjoying the accommodations? The ice in his veins became a glacier. They were aware. He knew. Before his thumb could stammer a reply, a second message arrived. Don't trouble yourself calling out. Nobody credits such tales. Just settle in. Enjoy your stay. Raw panic surged, a primal scream trapped in his throat. Escape. Now. He snatched his overnight bag, its few unpacked contents irrelevant. His hand hovered over the doorknob, a fresh wave of fear paralyzing him. Were they positioned outside, anticipating this? He pressed his eye to the peephole's distorting lens. The parking lot slumbered, bathed in the jaundiced light of failing lamps. Empty, seemingly. A deep, shuddering breath, then he twisted the knob. The night air struck like a physical blow, shockingly cold against his flushed skin. He aimed for his car, a desperate trajectory, keys fumbling, betraying his terror. He reached the driver's side door just as another motel room door creaked open nearby. Leaving so soon? Silas's voice, oily and laced with amusement, froze Elias in place. But the performance is only beginning. Slowly, heart hammering against his ribs, Elias turned. Silas stood silhouetted in the doorway, no longer alone. Two hulking figures flanked him, their features indistinct but their presence radiating brute force. All three wore identical, predatory grins. Horror spiked as Elias registered the tablet clutched in Silas's spidery hand, its screen alive with fractured, real-time feeds from the cameras within the room he'd just fled. "What is it you want?" The words scraped from his throat, barely audible. Silas's grin stretched wider, impossibly thin lips peeling back from stained teeth. "Oh, merely your continued presence. We have such elaborate plans for you." In that stark moment, instinct roared louder than fear. With a surge of adrenaline, Elias hurled his bag. It struck Silas squarely in the chest, the unexpected impact sending the gaunt man staggering. Elias seized the fleeting advantage, diving into his car, hands slick with sweat as he wrestled the key into the ignition. The engine coughed, then roared to life scant seconds before one of the brutes clawed at his window. He slammed the gear shift into reverse, tires screaming protest as he tore out of the flicker light's blighted parking lot. His rearview mirror captured their fleeting, furious pursuit towards a waiting truck. He devoured the highway, miles at 80, the frantic rhythm of his pulse a deafening drumbeat in his ears. Destination unknown, direction irrelevant. Only distance mattered, putting leagues between himself and that house of horrors. An hour bled away in a fugue state of hypervigilance. Mirrors scanned constantly for headlights gaining ground. Finally, the raw edge of adrenaline dulled, leaving behind a trembling exhaustion. He veered into the fluorescent sanctuary of a brightly lit truck stop, the perceived safety allowing him, finally, to halt. Slumped behind the wheel, the night's events replaying in jagged fragments, a chilling realization struck. How many others had stumbled into Silas's web? How many hadn't possessed the desperate luck to break free? With unsteady fingers, he retrieved his phone, dialing 911. The dispatcher's calm voice absorbed his fragmented, breathless account, promising investigation. Yet, as the call ended, a profound unease remained. Silas possessed his check-in details, his name, his license plate. What prevented him from seeking retribution? The remainder of the night passed fitfully in the cramped confines of his car. the thought of another motel room intolerable. Don painted the sky in bruised pastels as he drove to the nearest precinct, offering a formal, detailed statement. The officers listened, their expressions a mixture of sympathy and professional skepticism. Without tangible proof, it remained his narrative against the motel staff's inevitable denial. The subsequent weeks unfolded under a pall of gnawing anxiety. Each phone chime, every email notification jolted him. He braced for the appearance of those violating images in his inbox, for demands whispered through encrypted messages. But silence stretched, unbroken. Perhaps they had moved on, seeking fresh prey. Perhaps the police inquiry, however tentative, had spooked them into dormancy. Whatever the cause, it seemed the immediate threat had receded. Yet, the experience had irrevocably altered his internal landscape. He became acutely vigilant, scrutinizing every hotel room with suspicion, perpetually scanning for the glint of a hidden lens. The open road lost its allure. The constant travel, the nights spent adrift in unfamiliar spaces, became unbearable. He sought different employment, tethered closer to home. Months later, his phone rang. The detective assigned to his case. They had, at long last, amassed sufficient cause for a raid on the Flicker Light Motel. The discoveries, the detective conveyed in measured tones, painted a picture darker than Elias could have conceived. A sophisticated, long-running operation preying upon hundreds, their privacy systematically plundered. Silas and his accomplices were apprehended, facing a litany of charges. But the inflicted wounds, the shattered sense of security for countless individuals, could never be fully mended. Hanging up, Elias felt a turbulent confluence of emotions, profound relief at their capture, simmering rage at their calculated cruelty, and the persistent low hum of fear that had become his unwelcome shadow. The nightmare, objectively, was concluded. Its echoes, however, would resonate indefinitely. In the years that followed that harrowing night at the Flicker Light Motel, Elias actively worked to reconstruct his sense of safety. Therapy provided tools. The unwavering belief of friends and family offered solace where official channels had initially wavered. He found a new purpose, advocating for stricter privacy protections and greater accountability within the hospitality industry. Occasionally, in the quiet solitude of late hours, the old habit surfaces, eyes scanning corners, heart quickening at an unexpected reflection. But then, the counter-narrative asserts itself. He survived. He saw the trap and evaded it. He escaped. That night imparted brutal lessons about misplaced trust, the wisdom of intuition, and the courage required to speak truth even into disbelieving ears. It unveiled a capacity for darkness he hadn't fathomed existed in the world, but simultaneously it illuminated his own resilience, his own unexpected strength. Now, within the secured perimeter of his own home, surrounded by precautions once unthinkable, he understands that while the scars remain, they are not his defining feature. He is a survivor, fortified by the ordeal, and if recounting his terror can shield even one other soul from a similar violation, then a sliver of meaning might be salvaged from that night of profound dread. The world undeniably harbors hidden perils and shadowed intentions. Yet, it also holds reserves of courage, legions of survivors refusing silence in the slow, inexorable grind of justice. Ultimately, that is where Elias chooses to fix his gaze, not on the fear, but on the triumph over it, not on the violation, but on the strength forged in its wake. Because in the deepest darkness, when hope seems a forgotten language, that is the anchor. The intrinsic knowledge that we are more durable than our fears, more resilient than our traumas, and that whatever horrors confront us, the power resides within us to overcome, to reclaim, and to emerge not merely as survivors, but as warriors reshaped by the fight.